Checking now. Okay.
If you don't mind, thanks.
Yeah. Just give me a minute to bring it up.
And it's the latest one on the portal that I sent you the link to. Yeah. Okay.
Marquise, we ready to get started?
Yeah, and I'm just going to thank everybody because you guys were very gracious about allowing me to do this virtually. I'm helping my brother out after he had major surgery. His kids were planned to come and one of them just took a new job and was just not able. So I really appreciate you all being flexible. It's probably easier this way, you know, open a beer, have a glass of wine, and, you know, we'll get through this very easily. So.
Okay, Nakisha, you want to get us started, please?
Yes. Give me one second. Sending the link back again to Councilman Field if he can't find a link. Give me 1 second.
Nakisha, who's on?
I'm here.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We're gonna call this meeting to order. Mayor Wood, you ready to call it to order? And for me to do the roll call?
Yes, do the roll call of council, planning commission, and then the EDA.
Okay. All right. Councilman Fields,
Here.
Councilman Pete,
Here.
Councilman Young,
Here.
Councilman Peterson,
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Miles,
Present.
Vice Mayor Nickerson,
Here.
Mayor Wood.
Present.
Thank you. All right, for the Planning Commission, Chairman Nickerson. Vice Chair Noy. Commissioner Basil. Commissioner Russell.
Here.
Commissioner Wood.
Here.
Commissioner Tony. Okay, that's it for the Planning Commission. Now for EDA, I have Chair Daly,
Here.
Vice Chair Harris, Director Brown, Director Spence,
Here.
Director Garborough,
Who's muted?
he's muted.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Treasurer Lawson,
Here.
thank you. That's everyone, Mayor Wood.
And I believe Tyrone is just logging in.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna turn this over for the presentation, and we're gonna ask that everybody, if you got questions, to either write them down, put them in the chat, and then we'll get to the questions at the end so they can go through their full presentation. Okay, and so we will turn this over to Ms. Catherine and her team, and they will lead us in the presentation.
And
Sounds good.
Brian's going to be my navigator. I'm working again not in my own office, so it's some things just aren't working perfectly. So, well, we're happy to be here. And you know, retail attraction is a very complicated process. It sounds easier sometimes than in reality. So what we want to do is just kind of walk you through the process. You've met me at the council meeting. Some of you have not. If you were not at the council meeting, Catherine Timko, principal of the Riddle Company. My colleague is here, Brian Licari. I'll let Brian introduce himself quickly.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Brian Licari with eConsult Solutions, teamed up with the Riddle Company on this. So nice to see everyone.
And Dr. Angelides is on a plane coming back, I think, from Zurich tonight. So what we want to do is first just give a quick update of where we are. And our next slide shows that in our contract. This is just some of the tasks, and I laid it out kind of by month on a 12-month basis. You know, we've done the retail trade definition, which we're going to go through. We've done the data collection and analysis. And in fact, in the next 2 weeks, we're going to give you some additional information. We're starting to build the target list of tenants. Anything you see that's like where you see the hashtags, this is going to be an ongoing process. And for example, as you build these small area plans, we may tweak who the target list of tenants as things change or things happen. If a tenant moves out, there may be an opportunity to tweak that. The collateral material, we have some basic information now, and again, as the process goes on, we will build that. We're building a marketing deck that will have a lot of the data, some of which you'll see tonight, and then that'll be updated. It'll be updated on a regular basis, and then the outreach is ongoing. And Reggie and I went to the Washington Mid-Atlantic ICSC convention. It was a week ago in DC. And that was really the first public facing with our group and with your team, with Dumfries, for this. And I'd say, Reggie, we had some very good meetings. We had lots of good introductions, and we took this meeting as we're building a foundation, we're building a network, we're building relationships. We had 3 formal meetings with brokers in the market, KLMB. We met with SVN, and I'm probably forgetting somebody just because of what else I'm dealing with. And then we also met with one of the tenants, which is Wawa, and we'll kind of walk through that later. And then it was anecdotal meetings. I introduced them to other firms that are working in the market. We introduced them to young brokers who, for them, this is an opportunity. This is a market that's emerging, particularly with what's happening in the waterfront. So we were building that relationship, and this is going to be something that's ongoing for a while. So if you go to the next slide, one of the first things, and this is what we want to walk through, everything we are building for the town is coming through the lens of a retailer. It's what a retailer looks for, what they're looking at, it's how they get interested in a market. And typically trade areas are done, and again, some of this may be redundant for what we did in front of council, but it's either typically done on rings or in drive times, or the image on the right is something for downtown DC. The ring boundaries that you're looking at, it's typically 1, 3, and 5 miles. A Walmart or a Costco may be 1, 5, and 10 miles, but there's some issues that will impact that. We don't use rings all the time. And in a market like yours, this is KLMB's. I took it right off their flyer. I like to joke that in that outer ring, there's a lot of water and the fish don't spend any money. So if we see something like an I-95 or a water body, we will adjust it. And the next slide will show you what a typical drive time looks like. And the image on the right, for example, is in a town just outside of Cleveland. It's called Ohio City, and it's right on Lake Erie. So their original firm had done rings. Half of it was in Lake Erie. So we customized that using drive times that we know tenants use. And I'm going to let Brian walk a little bit through, because it was his team that really played around with what we built for Dumfries.
Yeah, sure. So, using Esri, which is a sort of the most used GIS, Geographic Information Systems platform, you can sort of establish a point and then create drive times, and it's sort of similar to Google Maps when you look to see how long it'll take to drive somewhere. It'll establish a boundary on sort of a routine day, not considering rush hour traffic, but this is about how long it will take to drive, within this area. We started with the 5-minute, 10-minute, and 20-minute drive times. And then if you look to the map to the right, we really wanted to focus in on the 5-minute and the 10-minute drive time. The 5-minute point is about where the Wawa is today. And we ended up sort of customizing this somewhat, because we know that with the development of the parkway that will then connect to Potomac Shores, that whole kind of area is going to be accessible now within a 10-minute drive time. It's also important to establish this sort of as the baseline because, over the next year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, as Potomac Shores and additional housing is developed, that's going to increase the number of households. That's going to make the area even more attractive to retailers. And so you're going to see this sort of upward trend that's going to be a very attractive story. And so that's why we sort of customize this one in this case.
Yeah, so, and what we do is, again, we're following the protocol of what a retailer will look for. So the next couple of slides are just the type of data we're pulling. And again, this is what we're pulling right now, and we will have this on a deck that we will send to the town. So we're going to look at what those primary trade area and demand drivers are. So in a suburban market like this, it really is the residents, it's the households, it's employees of businesses that are located there. We will be looking at education levels because there are tenants, for example, Trader Joe's. One of the things that differentiates a market for them is education. 46% of the population has to have a BS or above. Now, they have slightly adjusted that because of what's going on in the grocery world, and they have realized that their customer base has changed. But for years, if you did not have 46.1% in the primary trade area, they would not talk to you. And there are a lot of other tenants that look at that. And it's not so much that they care, does this person have a high school degree, a bachelor's degree, or a graduate degree? But that tells them who their customer is. And then if you go to the next couple of slides, you'll see some of that. So we also look at the type of household. Is it lots of families with kids? And the best example I've ever seen is the Container Store. And the head of real estate there said she needed so many houses built before '69, and she wanted 2 kids under 15. And when she did this presentation, it stuck in my head. The 11-year-old girl's going to get her bedroom redone, and the 13-year-old boy's going to get his bedroom redone because when they hit that age, mom's going to redo it. They have tiny closets. The house is old. They're going to go to college. They're going to come see me. And she said, I'll never see them again. And she said, and when the kids get out of college, that house is sold, another family moves in. She had it down to such a science that she understood exactly how many households with 4 people that she needed. And again, the age group. So we look at that. We also look at the type of employment when we'll look at like the catchment area of where those percentages are. And that's what we have on the right side. This is something we did for the airport. What has happened, however, is retailers are getting so complex in what they're looking for and so detailed. The next slide is one we always ran what's called a psychographic analysis. Up until the last 3 years, I really never sat in a meeting for years and had anybody pay attention to this. And Reggie, I think you were at the retail runway with me, and a couple of the tenants were saying, we look at psychographic. Psychographic after the demographics is our #1 thing that we'll look at. And these are algorithms that Esri has built, and they look at everything. They'll look at your age, they'll look at your college, they'll look at what you're spending on MasterCard, the household you live in. They look at race, they look at marital status. They build these things based on tracking retail spending for 15, 20, 30 years. And they have this data. They're able to get down to a granular level that they build these little, we call them clusters. But I can sit in a meeting and I've had tenants say to me, oh, I need Metro, I need savvy suburbanites. Oh, you've got Metro renters. This is great. How many do you have? What percentage is it? Enterprising professionals, great. We'll talk to you because they understand the buying habits. And that's what you see on the left. And we're building this for you right now. We'll have it for each of the trade areas, and then we'll have it as an aggregate level. And again, this is something that has become more prominent. So the next slide is something we built for ICSC, and we're still tweaking this. This is what we typically use as a retail profile. And we use this, again, working with brokers for years. This is the kind of information they want the first snapshot. If a tenant will come into a town and they'll say, what's your population? What's the growth rate? What's the household size? Give me this. It's just the basics. And so we build these for towns that we're working with, and this will get tweaked as we go along. And we use infographics because it's simple. And the profile on the left gives a little bit more, but this is the first snapshot a tenant's going to look at, or their broker and representative are going to look at. If you don't hit at least 50% of their benchmarks, they're not even going to pay attention. I kind of consider this like, it's like a first date. Okay, she's tall, she's got dark hair, she's got green eyes. Okay, she's hit my mark. I'm willing to talk to her. If you don't hit some of their benchmarks, they're not willing to talk to you. And again, I know this just from work I've done with brokers, including one of the largest brokerage firms in the DC region, and they started building these. And if you look at any flyer, this is the kind of data that they have on their flyers. And we tweak it slightly depending on the market. If this was downtown DC, we'd probably have a few different metrics on it. If this was Frederick, Maryland, it might be slightly different. So the other big thing that takes place in retail is competition. And again, I kind of took this next slide from one of the KLMB slides. This is one of the most difficult things to deal with for a town, because every single tenant has their own trade area. And I'm looking at Walmart, they have a 10 miles sometimes. And again, it depends on the physical geography. So we look at the competition, not only what's in the trade area, but what's surrounding that. And that is something that we're working on right now. But the competition is key, because a Walmart's only going to open one store in a market. Dunkin' is only going to open so many. Lidl is only going to open so many. So if they're already there, they're not necessarily coming to Dumfries. So the competition is key. And one of the things that as we move along in this process, we're gonna do a little due diligence. Like, I know the guys from Lidl, I know Walmart. We'll find out. I mean, Walmart's probably not the same, but Lidl, we know what their lease situation is. Some of the smaller inline restaurants, we'll be able to find out what their lease terms are. If something is terminating in 5 years or 7 years, this is something we can put on the top of mind and say, okay, we might be able to get this if they're lease terms. So that's why we look at the competition. And so the next slide is just kind of something I put together, because literally in this process, 2 + 2 does not always equal 4. You could have the exact perfect site. It can be perfect. It could have the right square footage, could be on the right side of the street. But the corporation has decided that they're no longer opening stores, or they're closing stores in a market, which means that your market is no longer of interest. And we're seeing that right now. A couple of them have just announced Grocery Outlet is closing stores. Saks is closing a lot of their stores. Smaller stores like Dollar Tree is closing stores. And it doesn't necessarily mean your market isn't suitable. It's a corporate decision that says we need to trim our portfolio. We're weeding out the lower end of the spectrum, and then we're going to rebuild up. So a lot of it has to do with timing. A lot of it has to do with industry shifts. And sometimes it happens to be lease terms. Again, you've got the perfect site, or you got a tenant who is 19 years into a 20-year lease, and the landlord's told them their lease is going to jump 150%, which you see more in an urban market than you do in a market like Dumfries, but it happens. Or again, it's the perfect market, but the only site is on the wrong side of the street. And I've seen that happen more often than not. You can't take that left. They don't want left turns. They want right turns in. And I talk with my hands, so I apologize. But they want that right turn. If they can't get a right turn, if they're on the wrong side of the intersection, it just doesn't work. So there's a lot of moving parts in this. And one of the other things that really has an impact on it is co-tenancy. Certain tenants will want to be near somebody, grocery anchored centers, they want to be near the Giants, the Safeway, the Lidl, the Wegmans. There are others that say they don't want to be anywhere near them. So that's also part of the balance. That's why I say it doesn't necessarily equal 4. It could be a perfect site, but it just doesn't work for some reason, or the traffic count is wrong. And I've literally stood on the corner with retailers and a broker where he's sitting there like this for like an hour, watching the cars go by. He's looking at the type of cars. He's looking at the population in the cars. He's looking how often the lights will change. He's looking at the turning ratio, and he'll say, nope, not interested, wrong site. So there's a lot of issues that go into this. So the next thing we just kind of want to walk through in this process, and this is where we are now. We are building out the target tenants. And from our early due diligence, Brian's team and myself have sat down. We're kind of looking at what we think makes sense. One of the challenges you have right now is there's not a lot of available space. But again, you've got these small area plans in process. You've got this waterfront concept that's coming. So there may be an opportunity, again, to start looking at opportunities for the type of tenants and what we're looking for. And again, as we further go into the process and the due diligence, and Brian, you can go to the next slide. One of the things that may happen is if the industry changes. I mean, I keep hearing all day, lettuce has gone up 28% since January. If, grocery continues to go up and restaurant continues to go up, again, some of these change and their marketplace shifts about their appeal at the moment. But one of the things we did want to open it up tonight, and Reggie and I had talked about this, one of the things we would love to hear from you tonight is who's on your list? What type of tenants do you think make sense for Dumfries that you would like to see? Are there specific brands you would like to see? And I think one of the other things that would be helpful for us to understand is, are there projects you go to that you like so that we can get a better understanding of what you're looking for? And again, think of this as a fluid process. There's no wrong answer. So I'm going to turn this over to all of you on the call. Just jump in.
And feel free to add in the chat as well.
Yeah. Why don't we ask the mayor and the vice mayor, what's on your list? Who would you love to see in town?
I mean, for me, I would love to see a Harris Teeter, a Whole Foods. I would love to see, you know, the type of chain restaurant, somebody in the Darden food group, right?
Okay.
One of those type of brands, or maybe one of their upscale type brands.
Mhm.
Food and entertainment type facility. And we could bring a Dave and Buster's or a Chuck E. Cheese, something for the kids too, for the young people to be able to do.
Okay.
So I don't have any particular brands that I'm looking for. I'm not loyal to any brands. I don't have any stock in any of them. I just want to see something that works. I do want to see something for the children. I want to see us address the food desert that we have here in this area. It's something that we've been talking about from our dais since 2018. I would like
Okay.
to see that addressed. We've been talking about it. Grocery stores keep getting close. I don't think they're getting close enough. So I would like to see that addressed. And then, as the mayor said, something for the children. We definitely want to see some more entertainment options for the children. So that's really what my focus is.
Okay. Anybody else? Jump in.
You have a few people that have said some remarks in the chat. You have a Starbucks, and someone also said hardware stores and co-working space, a Dave and Buster's. So there's also some remarks coming in the chat as well.
Okay. Reggie, is it possible that you might monitor the chat? Can I impose on you?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, I have a few suggestions, guys. Recommendations. If that's okay to speak now.
Oh, of course.
Okay. So, in respect to what the vice mayor and the mayor is saying, I respect the fact of bringing in the food industry, because the food industry has been a heavy ask from these citizens for close to about 8 to 10 years now, right?
Okay.
We're getting a lot of feedback over the years of we don't have enough variety.
Okay.
There has been talks of the closest skating ring to the town or Prince William County is Cavalier in Stafford.
Mhm.
There has been multiple conversations, and I'm not for sure if all the rest of the council have heard them or have heard that out and about in the community, but there has been a lot of conversation of asking, can we put ourselves in position to have a roller skating ring here? There has been conversations of, now these are just options to throw out of what, this is not my take. My take is totally different. I'm in the sports arena, but I'm bringing you listenings from the community. There has been talks of, are we in position for a movie theater? There has been talks of a Jersey Mike's.
Yeah.
That's really about the gist of it from pretty much the community standpoint there, as well as sporting activities.
Okay.
Because Dumfries does not at all have anything that represents the sporting arena. And so understanding that we are moving into a new sector, new era of adding in, not moving into, but we're just adding in a tourism sector within our organizational within the town, that we have some type of oversight and look into as far as what can be a regional draw for tourism.
Okay.
That's pretty much the gist from the community. My side is a little different, but that's pretty much what I gather when I'm speaking
Okay.
with citizens within the community.
Okay,
That's
and I'm
all I-
seeing some of the notes popping up. Okay.
Okay.
I'm just going to talk about one, Dave and Buster's, and I'm going to plead that I don't know if there is one in that region. I know they're not expanding right now, but I'm just going to say, let's say there was one at Potomac Town Center.
It's one in Springfield Town Center, so which is
Okay.
up the road, Fairfax County.
So then the odds of you getting one, that's one of those things that I was talking about. They each have their own trade areas. You're inside their trade area. Dave and Buster's trade area is bigger than Costco's because you're going to go to Dave and Buster's if you have teenagers because of birthday parties, corporate events, but you're only going to go maybe 1 or 2 times a year, if that. So they need a very wide market to capture from to stay in business. So that's a really good example. It's like IKEA, you know, the big IKEA that's down in off of 95. You won't get another IKEA because you've got one. In fact, DC region has 2 full service IKEAs and full size IKEAs. So Punch Bowl Social is one. And again, that they're different than a Dave and Buster's, but they also have a large draw. So we have to look. And so I'm writing all this down, and then I'll get the rest from Reggie. And we'll look and
So-
see what's in the market. That's where we're going to build that competition list to see what's there.
And Catherine, I was just saying Dave and Buster's as an example for
Right.
adult entertainment because I wanted to look at, like, you know, we don't have any brunch spots or rooftop spots or,
Right.
you know, lounges for people to hang out. So I was looking at that.
Yeah.
The thing I was remiss in saying is hardware. You know, maybe 9-10 years ago, Ace Hardware, there was an Ace Hardware deal that kind of fell through. We have no
Okay.
hardware stores nowhere in this little area.
Okay.
We got to get on the highway and go away. So to revisit, figure out how to get Ace Hardware or some true hardware, one of those smaller brands, not a Home Depot or Lowe's, where we don't have to go all around John Henry's barnyard to get hardware stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, and Ace is a perfect tenant for this size of a market. So
Okay.
it's
May. So out of respect of what the mayor just said, that has been a big conversation for a long time as well. And I agree with what the mayor said as far as a hardware store, because there was one here in the past. And I'm not for sure if you know or not, when we speak of the language of a grocery store, there used to be a grocery store here as well in Bonus, in Triangle Plaza. That's where it was at, in the Triangle Plaza there. Now, as far as adult entertainment and amenities go, I believe that we are in a position now that we are covering adult amenities and entertainment. That being in the Rose, that provides a lot of amenities for the adults to come enjoy, and that's a regional draw there. That they are moving into the regional tourism draw as well. Now we also have coming up the waterfront district, and that will be more that probably would pretty much be geared to families, more so the adult entertainment at night. Again, as I speak, ma'am, we are amidst of having recreational and sporting avenues for the children in this town. So as I move, and a piece of me staying heavy on the sports and the youth is it also helps and supports the combat of growth within the youth as they grow, because we are having not problems, but we're having slight issues every here and there that our youth are having boardism spots. Now, I refer to a lot of my growth in the Fairfax County, Alexandria area, to where those amenities were provided, to where teens had somewhere to go. Teenagers do not have anywhere to go around here.
okay.
You know,
Well, this is really helpful because this gives us, I think, a framework of what to start to really kind of penetrate in and to look at.
correct.
Catherine, we have someone with their hand raised as well. I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge them as well.
Yeah, this is me, Councilman Fields here. A lot of great ideas that everyone is putting out there, and some of the ideas are just bigger than our town can handle. Let's look at the small town vibe that we have and what's going to attract people to feel home and to have them come back to us in the town. You had Potomac Shores up there earlier on your map.
Mhm.
And years ago, there was a restaurant down there called Tim's River Shore.
Right.
And they closed due to Potomac Shores expansion. For at least 2 to 3 years in a row now, I've talked to the owner of the Thames River Shore. His other places are in King George, Thames 2, and up in, I think it's Louisa County where the other one is, somewhere out that way. But that is something that was on the water,
Mm-hmm.
and it does have a great small town vibe to it that I think we need to reach out to him again to see, he's expressed to me, and I believe Derek has talked to him too over the past few years. But specifically, when I've gone down to the one in King George, we've talked to him. That is a great old school vibe
Yeah.
that really could paint the town as, hey, I remember Tim's when it used to be down at Potomac Shores, and let's come back to Dumfries for that. And I'm quite sure the new one, if he builds a new one on our waterfront area, would be much better than the old ones used to be. But I think we need to look into maybe some mom and pops type stuff. Like we used to have a Dumfries Cafe. People come from miles around to come to the Dumfries Cafe. Of course, that got acquired with the VDOT removing and things like that. I'm not sure if the owners would be interested in reopening, but something maybe similar to that. So the small town vibe type of mom and pop things is what I think we could heavily look into, because like you described, the big things are just too big, and
Yeah.
some of the small things we're just overlooking, I think. So small town, small mom and pop thing gives it that good vibe that people come back to. And I saw in the comments someone said something like Aquapan. They're
Yes.
they're one of this and one of those and one of these. There isn't another in another town somewhere else. So I need to focus on what can make Dumfries special.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I saw there was a question. I only saw a piece of it again because I don't want to touch my screen at the moment. About does Potomac Shores fall into this? And it does for certain types of tenants. And again, I'm just going to, if you had a Dave and Buster's, Potomac Shores is definitely inside their trade area because again, their trade area is very large. If you have the Ace Hardware, let's say it's on Route 1, it might not be, because my guess is with what's happening in the retail there, they may have their own. They have 1,500, people there. They may have a small hardware store. So some of it will depend on the type of tenant. And different tenants, again, have very different trade areas. One of the things that I'm realizing, Brian, we're going to have to do is we're going to do a competitive map for grocers. And we're going to do like what we did for Mantua, kind of build that and show where the grocers are today, because then we can help you understand why maybe you don't have the grocer you want because you may be surrounded. And again, we're only 90 days into this process, so we're still not even quite. We're still learning everything. So what I want to do is, though, be respectful of time. What I'd like to do is kind of just walk through. Once we have all this data, we're going to build different tools, and these tools will evolve. I have some examples up, and the next one is something like we built for Atlanta. We did a couple neighborhoods in Atlanta. Again, this is the profile I was talking about, using the trade area and then showing the demographics. And you'll see a sample of this even further down where because we had different markets. And then there are a number of things, it's just kind of like a summary of the kind of data, the steps we use, and it's really using the data to tell the story. And every meeting Reggie and I were sitting in, we heard this from the broker we were talking to, and we talked to a couple of guys from KLMB who do most of the retail leasing and manage a lot of the retail property in the region around Dumfries and in Dumfries. And then we talked to a couple other as well. And these are the types of things that they're looking at. But again, one of the key tools is that proactive outreach. It's being out there regularly, being in touch with the tenants, keeping them up to speed, maybe we do walking tours at some point. Maybe we'll do site tours at some point. So it's all of that. This is just kind of the list. And then building some messaging that the town can use in its own social media. You have a win, you put it up on social media, you put it up on Instagram, you put it up on LinkedIn, things like that. So, and then it's building this custom materials. And the next is something that we built for another client of ours, and it's Montgomery, Alabama. Everybody has an image of Montgomery, Alabama that is incorrect. We just did a presentation with the head of economic development at the International Economic Development Council. He asked people to describe what they thought. It was so off base. So again, if a resident or a business professional has this image, we know that retailers don't have the right information. So again, this is kind of what we've showed you examples of this. The next one is we may decide we need to do a series of maps, and it may be showing maps. And this is just a series I put together that we used in DC. The one in the top right corner is it's pedestrian counts. We may do traffic counts, and we're trying to get our handle around the traffic counts. We've had a lot of different information on what's reality, but it may be that we need to do that. And we build this series of maps that show the anchors, show the new development, show the highway improvements, show the small area plans, show the traffic counts. So we'll have all that. And again, we're still playing around with that. And the next is just another example. This is downtown Philadelphia from like 10 years ago, where we were trying to show pedestrian counts at key corners that we were trying to build. This was right after like 09. There was a lot of vacancy, and a lot of their tenants had left because 20-year leases came due. So I guess it's 2010 is what I'm looking at. And they had their own downtown bid, had a counter company that they did this. The next is something, and I put this up, the next one is Atlanta again. So we had 3 different submarkets in Atlanta, and I showed this to Reggie because I said, once you get the small area plans, this is an ideal tool. You'll have those areas, and we can build this kind of information for them. So if somebody is looking at the market, they can look at these areas and compare them. I'd rather be here. I'd rather be here. How they compare to each other. And we'll use visuals. We'll use storytelling to do that. And then the next, one of the things I do want to do is just kind of walk through examples. And these are a couple of deals that I've been involved with or that our clients have done. And yes, a bakery would be ideal. I'm looking at that. I just popped up. Target, for example, in Philadelphia, there were 5 Target Express deals done. Or excuse me, 3 Target Express deals done. It took 5 years to get the real estate director for Target to follow us. If you ever were to meet him, he'd call me his stalker. I would literally go running down the hall at the National ICSC show, because that's where I always saw him. And Scott, he'd be like, go away from it. And I'd open the iPad. I'm like, look, we had this many babies for it, and we had this. This is what's happening. Here's the new development. Here's how many new units. But it took 5 years for him to finally agree to having a meeting. And it wasn't anything to do with Philadelphia. They had made a decision to expand into Canada. But I never stopped bothering him. I nonstop called him, and he finally agreed. And then we started building the relationship. We built the relationship with him, with the landowners in downtown Philadelphia. And they did open 3 Target Express stores. There's one left because they realized it's a model they couldn't support. They needed to go back to the larger format. But it took a long time just to get them to the table. There's a project in Rockville, some of you may know, called Pike and Rose. It took 17 years from when they decided they needed to reposition and repurpose the center to when it actually opened the first phase. And it's not complete yet. There's a second phase that they're still working on. Sprouts in downtown DC, and DC, as long as I've been working with DC, it's actually longer than that, is when Mayor Williams was the receiver. We were charged with getting a grocery store. We had a Balducci's, not we, my client actually had the lease with the Balducci's. They had an LOI, a letter of intent. Never happened. Whole Foods had a letter of intent. Never happened. About a month and a half ago, and Reggie was standing next to me when the broker told me, I screamed. Everybody looked because it took so long. And that actual Sprouts deal I was involved with 3 years ago, working with them, working with the owner. The owner was having problems getting capital, but I spent hours in presentations with Sprouts. And some of the maps you saw were part of what we built to help the grocer look and understand what was going on. Harris Teeter in North Stafford County. 9 years before the KLM broker literally said yes to me. And I knew the president of Harris Teeter, and he'd say, deal with Kerry Judd, don't talk to me. And finally on year 9, he said yes. And I called him up and I said, was it a typo? He said, no, we're ready to talk to you. So some of it, again, is the process of their own internal growth engine, what they're doing, how markets are adapting. And one of the issues in Stafford was they had a moratorium on housing because they didn't want to build new schools. The grocers saw that as prohibitive. We're dealing with the project in Montgomery County right now, and we're hearing nonstop from retailers that there are issues tied to rent control. They're very concerned, not rent control for the retailer. Their concern is that if the county is willing to put in rent control that's restricting residential development and investment, what's next? So sometimes those kinds of issues can influence these types of things. The next thing I do is just kind of want to throw up some things that are happening. Whoops, I think the retail trends, maybe it didn't make the final. If not, we can send it to you. It looks like it didn't make the one on the portal. So there are a couple, I'll just walk through them real quickly, and then we'll make sure, Reggie will make sure they get a final copy of it. But one of the things we're seeing across the country and across the spectrum on retail is they're shrinking their footprints. Grocers are shrinking their footprints. IKEA is shrinking its footprint. And part of that is some of them are going into more urban markets. Some of it is because of the growth into mixed use developments, and you can't get a 65,000 square foot grocery store typically under a residential building unless it's a certain level of residential development. So they're going to the smaller format stores. The other thing we're seeing is there's been such low delivery of retail space. The proliferation of space that is second generation or secondary lease space that may not even be the same type of tenant. Secondary restaurant space is turning over like that in every market across the country. Why? Because the landlords aren't giving large tenant fit out budgets anymore, and the infrastructure's there. So the tenant doesn't have to pay for it. He's already got the ventilation. He's got the hood system. He's got the grease trap. He's got the plumbing he needs for his multiple sinks. So we see that happening, but we're also seeing, and Brian had done some research on this, that we're seeing tenants going into space that they really don't belong in because they can't get anything else because it's not being built. So we're seeing that happening. Lease structures are shifting. It used to be just standard 10, 5, and 5. The lenders understood it, the landlords understood it, and the tenant and the retailer themselves understood it. Now we're seeing that shrink. It's typically either 3, 5, and 5, which makes no sense to me. 5, 5, and 3. So we're seeing those lease terms shrink, which is also creating some challenges because there are some tenants that will not go in unless they get a 10-year lease because it's such an investment for them to go into a market. And we're dealing with this in one shopping center up in Maryland. The tenant point blank told us we weren't willing to sign unless we could guarantee we could get a minimum 10 years because of the amount of money it's going to cost us to go into this market, build our market brand. We're not interested. But particularly with mom and pops, you might have a mom and pop that got stuck in a 10-year lease and they're on the hook for another 5. So that's where you start to see also the lease is shrinking. The other thing that's happening is what's going on in the international and the national market. Tariffs have really had an impact. Some of the tenants are not able to get the goods, even mom and pops that may have gotten stuff that through the internet or through distributors that are bringing in goods from overseas. The tariffs are really hurting them. So that's having major disruptions to the market. Generational changes. There is a huge shift, and I'm in a household right now again with my brother. His kids were here, they're Gen Z. We had millennials around, and just listening to them all. Everybody wants something different. Wellness has become a big thing for younger generations. The convenience is a big thing, particularly for older generations. So the generational shifts, and particularly for younger generations, is really changing how retailers not only are building out their space, but what they're putting in their space and where the growth is. Wellness is the fastest growing category, and it covers a lot right now in retail. It's yoga, it's healthy restaurants, it's types of takeout that are healthy food, it's day spas, things like that. So it is really shifting what's going on. And the next one really that we're seeing everywhere is convenience and paramount. We are seeing consumers, and all the research is showing that people will pay more for convenience. It really started a little bit before COVID, but COVID exacerbated it. And you've got a large population of baby boomers, and convenience is key. And then you got the young kids who sit in home, everything is on their phone, they order their food, they order their diapers, it's convenience, and convenience is driving a lot of this. And what convenience is doing, particularly with delivery, even for small mom and pops, is it's changed their entire distribution system. They have to have delivery trucks, they have to have different kind of loading, and they have to have storage. So that also shifts of what's happening in retail attraction. If they cannot accommodate it, the deal won't happen. And then e-commerce. Sales are continually going up, but a lot of online stores are now opening brick and mortar stores. And part of that is it's the experiential, that whole trend of walking into a store feeling good. It smells good. You can touch it. You're entertained. Restaurants who have wine tasting, they have chef nights and they teach you how to make real bolognese sauce. All of that is also happening in the retail world with experiential. So the online stores are now opening brick and mortar. And again, this is across all kinds of categories in the retail. And then food consumption is also changing. And again, some of it is coming from wellness, but some of it is coming from the cost of food. One of my favorite data points was 2016, for the first time in this country, since it had been tracked for 40-something years by the USDA, food out of the home exceeded food in the home. It reversed during COVID, where food in the home obviously was more than out of the home. And then it started to come back, and it just started to go back where food out of the home in certain markets is higher than food at home. And if you've been to the grocery store, anything you buy except that takeout bar is food at home. It's grocery. If you go to the Olive Bar, you go to the pizza counter, you buy a sandwich at the Wegmans, that's food out of the home, and it's taxed like it's takeout food. And you'll notice on your grocery bill, if there's taxes, there's a differential. But it's starting to come back again. But with the cost of food and the cost of going out is going up, the other thing we're seeing, and restaurants are having to adapt, the cost of labor is tough. Their population of workforce is gone. A lot of the staff that that used to work there are immigrants, and they're not coming to work anymore. That's unfortunate, but restaurants are having to adapt. But again, you go out to eat, and Brian's got a bunch of kids. I don't know what it's like when you go out to eat, but my partner and I, we no longer order 2 appetizers and 2 dinners and a bottle of wine. We order 1 dinner, 1 appetizer, and each get a glass of wine, maybe a second glass. And it's actually probably still cheaper to get the bottle, but if you don't drink it, you can't take it out most of the places you go. So that's also shifting. So restaurants are changing their menus. They're adapting to that. They're adapting on how they seat people, where they seat people, and the type of table structures. Fast casual, counter service, and limited service. The Panera Bread's an easy example. You go in, you place your order, they give you a number, they bring it to you. Some of them, Temco, your order's up, you go up and get it yourself. So that is also shifting. And again, a lot of that has to do with convenience, it has to do with cost, and it has to do with the way our lives are changing. Retailtainment is really changing, and that's a lot of what you all have mentioned here, some of the businesses. That is growing. People expect to be entertained when they go out. That has to be something meaningful. And part of it is the cost of going out, whether it's to a retail store or to a restaurant. If you're going to pay that much, if you're going to pay $300 for dinner, it better damn well be good, and it better be entertaining. It better be lovely. It better be wonderful. And then mixed use development is the thing we're seeing really in most markets in development. And I was on a ULI webinar this morning about housing, and mixed use is really the way a lot of them are going, but they're shrinking the retail on the ground floor. And if you look at some of the developments in more urban markets, again, Pike and Rose in Rockville is a good example. You're not going to be able to sustain a project of that size. And there are some markets that just can't handle it, but it is still something that we're seeing happening. And so that's something we're watching. And then the slide that's up is just the transitional retail pop-up temporary tenants. A lot of communities are doing this, particularly if they have a lot of vacant space. We're now seeing these temporary tenants. It's kind of like a test drive. You get to be in the store for 90 days, maybe 6 months. You get to test it. Bookstores are really key. Food, depending on the type of food, we've seen it happen. Apparel, we see lots of art that, artistry, if you will. A plant shop in DC, it's an old gas station site that was around the corner from my house. This plant store did so well, they took 2 permanent stores in Logan Circle, and they added in a hardware division of it. So we see this happening, and it's becoming more common. Communities are adapting and accepting this, and landlords are, because they don't want their ground floor retail space to be vacant, or they know they're going to renovate in a year and a half. They can't do anything until this lease. This is one of the things we're dealing with, one of the centers that we discovered in Rockville. The guy can't renovate the center because the biggest tenant in the shopping center has a covenant in his lease that says you can't touch the center until we're gone. Probably a stupid thing to put in a lease, but it means he cannot do major renovations. So he's been putting in temporary tenants. Some of them are turning into more permanent tenants. Key here is if you decide to do something like this, you have to have a permit and a CO process that works and it's quick, because typically a pop-up or temporary uses a lease, or excuse me, a license, not a lease. And so they're very quick turnaround. And we've got lots of models. If this is something, and again, you don't have a lot of vacancy right now, but if it's something that happens and it's something is of interest, we've done a lot of research on this, and we've got probably the best models of around the country. And one of them is in Seattle, where like the top pictures from Detroit 20 years ago. And it was a bunch of fashion designers were given storefronts and said, go to town. We've got 20 vacant storefronts, do whatever you want. Seattle took a similar approach to that, where they may have had an artist or a designer who had an online business. And one of them was great. She took a storefront and she had her materials in the window. Another one only had pictures of her stuff and she had a QR code. So it went right to her website. There are lots of different adaptations. Seattle probably has the best mix of anything I've seen. So, and Pittsburgh is a client of ours that we've done some work in. They're putting in 58 temporary tenants for the NFL draft. So there's lots of different models. So again, if this is something the town is interested in, or there's sites again that could handle something like this, like a plant store, then these are the things we'll look at. So, and then I think my last guidance on retail attraction is as the leadership, it's managing expectations. An architect drew this for me one day in a meeting. It's the wizard shoving a big box store into a store on Logan Circle in DC, which had small, older footprints. And he was just sitting in the meeting and I asked him if I could have it. Because one of the most difficult things of your job is to tell your constituents why you're not getting a Trader Joe's or why you're not getting a Dave & Buster's. And that's also, we are going to give you those tools so that all of you in a leadership position, if you're at a public meeting, you're at a council meeting, you get well, we want a Trader Joe's. Well, there's one half a mile away. And again, I'm just using it as an example. Why can't we have Harris Teeter? Well, there's one in North Stafford. Their trade area is this. You're inside their trade area. There's one here. Why can't we get this? So we're going to give you that so you can also manage so you don't get beaten up. They know you're doing this. They know you're spending the money and investing in our team to help you. And we know there was another firm that you had invested in. So we will give you these guidelines. We're going to give you the messaging so that you'll have that. So that if you're in a meeting, again, if somebody says this is what we want, you can then turn around and say, we agree, we'd love to have that. But, oh, by the way, they're no longer expanding. Dave & Buster's is a great one. They're no longer expanding right now. They have put all development on hold. So you'll have that information. So, and I think with that's we're done. And then we're just going to open it up to some questions. And I know we have a hard stop at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, I did want to acknowledge. Yeah, thanks, Catherine. I want to acknowledge some of the questions in the chat because I think they sort of segue from what you were talking about, Catherine. The first one, you kind of mentioned mixed use and kind of thinking about sizes, like getting the size of space with the right type of tenant. There are some questions about, is this study just retail, or are we thinking about, site assembly and thinking about redevelopment opportunities? I think that's part of the story. I think, we know there's a lot of other planning efforts going on in the community. There's the build out of Potomac Shores. So there's a lot to consider when we think about retail. I think like right now, when we see the existing retail supply, there are some limitations with the types of tenants you can attract, but it's also looking to the future as these other planning efforts go on and using that as a catalyst to say, okay, now we can start these conversations with some other types of tenants that might want newer space or space in a mixed use building, that sort of thing. So it's part of this story. I think we're not necessarily coming up with a redevelopment plan, but what we're doing is going to help sort of align with that. Right. The other question was about leakage. And so I'm glad that was brought up. And it's sort of a follow-up to what Catherine was talking about with e-commerce, where for the longest time, market analysts would do a supply gap analysis where you'd say, here's how much spending is going on in my community. Here's how much spending that's going on in the businesses. And if you have too much supply, that's an indicator. If you don't have enough supply, that's an indicator of leakage. All of that has been pretty much thrown out the window because of e-commerce. So that same data set that Esri produced, they discontinued it back in 2017 because they were starting to see so many inconsistencies with that data, and it was just, you couldn't really use it for anything meaningful.
Right.
Because again, people would buy online, return it to, return the item to the store. They would go to the store to shop, buy it online, and so you just couldn't track it. I mean, I think with that in mind, yeah, I think knowing that within the town of Dumfries and all the retail around it, there's certainly leakage. I think there's that. There's also the recognition of competition. And so then getting back to one of these other comments, what can Dumfries do to differentiate itself and be that, I don't want to go to the Home Depot. Yeah, I want to go to the local hardware store. Like one just opened in my neighborhood, and now I'm glad I don't have to go to Home Depot anymore. I can go to the local one and talk to the owner who's there every day, and he can help me with my problems. So, I think there are opportunities, and I think as we go through this process, more of those will manifest itself, because there's some lease deals that are the big, big retailers. Some of them are the local mom and pops. So we have to figure out what that balance is.
Well, and there's a really good example. If any of you are ever going to DC, if you go up to the Whole Foods and keep going, it's called Tenleytown. Years ago, there was supposed to be a Home Depot there. The guy couldn't make the turning ratio work. Simple as that. He could not get his truck. He tried every truck. He could not get his trucks in. But the developer, it was his first project, had promised the community they would have a hardware store. So he got Container Store in, and their lease required them to sell certain things. He got Best Buy, who had to sell appliances, and they had appliances on the floor, but they had to have a full interactive console where you could work with a client. And then they got an Ace Hardware in the basement. Now, what used to be Best Buy became Target, and I think my memory is I think Target left recently. I think their lease expired. But there are ways to do this where you can mix a tenant mix that achieves the same thing. And what Brian was talking about leakage, what we've started using, and the retailers have asked us to look at this, we have started using spending by category by household. So we can do that in the trade area. And then we look at potential spending, and we'll look at the potential spending. And it's called the Spending Potential Index. And we benchmark like in those areas against the national average. And we can look at that. We can see that if groceries are 180, and sometimes we look at it and say, this doesn't make sense. And then we realize the market is so high, the groceries cost another 20% at this store than it does in this other market. Like Manhattan benchmarks for groceries, for example, at like 220, and the national average is 100. So we use that. And then we also do projected spending and projected spending potential. And then that way we can look, and in one of the communities we're dealing with right now, one of the neighborhoods, it actually went down. And we looked at that and we realized this is a very wealthy neighborhood. The households are aging out. The kids are gone. They're downsizing. They're retiring. I mean, they have plenty of money, but they're not buying anything. So we watched the spending potential, and it was like, it didn't make sense until we drilled down. So that's part of how we'll address the leakage, because again, we can't capture leakage anymore.
Catherine, I think town
Yeah.
manager has a hand up.
Hey, Catherine, and then I wanted to know, based on your analysis, what are the 3 most realistic retail wins Dumfries could secure within the next 2 years? And what specific actions must we take as a town to make this happen?
I'm not sure I'm prepared yet to answer exactly which tenant. I mean, we know groceries of interest, so that's one of the things we're looking at, is to see what the competition is, the market. But let's say we can get, a grocer to the table. Part of it is also then when we bring them to the town, is that you show you're willing to work with them. If a grocer says, I need to be in the ground and open in 18 months, you say, fine, we're going to make that work. Or I need to know that once I've had my final inspections, I get my CO in 48 hours. It's movements like that when you've got a tenant that is ready and willing to go, that you're willing to work with them. I mean, obviously providing within your own zoning and your own codes. You're not, not necessarily going to do something crazy, but that's really where the town's role comes in. Or that, again, they come in for a site tour, you join them. They then know that you're willing, you're ready, you want them. So, and then following up on a very, very, very precious matter, so that if they send you something, it's not 6 months later, it's, 2 weeks later that you definitely get them a response. Even if it's a response that says, we're looking at it, they know you're interested. That's the best thing any town, community, or public body can do to make sure that a tenant knows you're interested.
Thank you for your response. We have another question from the Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity for us to share our personal desires and what we like personally. I also recognize, however, that our personal preferences aren't what's going to drive our economic development decisions. And while I think it's natural for all of us to have stores that we personally enjoy, for me, the priority really is in bringing the retailers that are proven to succeed in our market, and that will have the type of retailers that will have longevity here. I want us to focus on what the data shows and what will work for Dumfries and what will help sustain a strong retail corridor over time that will continue to draw in other retailers. My personal preferences, if there's a store that I want to shop at, if there's a specific coffee that I want to get, I'm going to go get that coffee, whether or not it's across the street or I have to hop on 95 to get it. So for me, my priority is sustainability.
Vice Mayor, if you have to get on 95 to get coffee, we're going to help you.
I mean, but you see what I'm saying? It's
No,
not.
but I get the point.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I would like to have, what I like close by all means. But what I'm saying is I want sustainability. I want economic sustainability. I don't want my favorite coffee and Russell's favorite coffee and Ebony's favorite coffee all right here clustered. It's not, I don't want this to be.
Agreed.
Our personal preferences are not going to drive our economic decisions here, because ultimately I might change my mind about what my favorite coffee is, because that's a personal taste. So,
what we heard
I
tonight,
want
for example, was stuff for teenagers and kids and entertainment. That gives us, again, a framework to look and see what type of tenant fits in your market that's not already in the area. And there are tenants out there. So that's where also this is helping us to understand. You know your town better than we will ever know your town.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. And that's why it is important when we say things like, we want to have entertainment, because we want our community to be able to have other entertainment options. We want to focus on making sure that the children have activities, things like that. So that's why, for me, it's not a specific brand or a specific store or something like that. It's about hitting what we need as a community, and those are specific options that are going to hit what our community needs. And most importantly, what's going to be sustainable, what's going to get here and be successful, that will draw in other retailers that will be successful as well. And whether that's food options, retail options, entertainment options, I just want something that's going to come here, build here, and grow, so that we're not going to end up with empty shells in 10 years.
Well, the worst thing is to bring somebody in that fails. And Washington, D.C. brought a Walmart and they failed. It was a bad experience. And then that sends a message to the marketplace. I see we have one other question. What I'd like to suggest is, Reggie, if you have the questions in the chat, we can take a stab at answering them and then sending them back to Reggie, and then you can distribute them. But I think, and I took my glasses off, Sean Pete, I think, had a question. Maybe that's the last question, and then we can look at whatever's in the chat, and we can add some additional information in writing and send that.
Thank you, Catherine. Well said there, Vice Mayor. Got to note that. I just want us to keep in mind, because I hear Harris Teeter and in that arena, Dumfries has changed. Dumfries used to be heavy Caucasian. I would like for us to keep that in mind. And not saying that matters or not, but in a sense it does. Because we don't want to bring in the wrong thing and our people not want to service what's being brung as an okay. So we have our numbers in Hispanic culture has moved up. Our numbers in the African American Black culture has moved up.
Yeah.
That's what
that's all of the data that we're looking at.
In the surrounding community, that's pretty much what's on the eastern side of Prince William County. Okay. All right. Just for notes. Thank you. That's all.
And just real quick on that point, and one of the questions in the chat about the branding study that's taking place. I mean, I think that's a big part of all of this is like, what is Dumfries' story, and communicating who is Dumfries, you know, and why should you be here. And I think that is a lot, you know, that does coincide with what we're doing. We have met the branding consultant, and so we're, again, not working together, but alongside, and certainly our work will impact each other's. But I think that story and telling that story is really what's going to be, you know, driving the next year or two, is that communication and telling the story.
Yeah, Brian, I respect that because it's definitely needed to be taken into consideration where we were to where we at now.
Well, and the retailers, I guarantee you, any retailer we talk to will have that research. You know, again, my job is to get them to talk to us. If they are willing to talk to us, they're going to do. They have access to research we'll never have our hands on, and they'll never share it with us. And they will look at that, and they will understand. They look at those trends, and they have huge research teams that look at this stuff all day long, and they understand how a market works for them and how their business is operating. So
Sounds good.
but it's a little after 8. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So
Catherine and Brian, I wanted to thank you for doing the presentation on behalf of the town as well as everyone who's here. I just wanted to make sure we're going to make sure we document all of the questions that we received. You disseminate that information from to the council, the Economic Development Authority, as well as the Planning Commission. I want to make sure that we get them their responses and that we be respectful of your time as well. So thank you so much. Man Wood, I'm not sure if you wanted to say anything. I know you came on. If you wanted to wrap us up, I would appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
No, I think you said it all. Thank you. Thank you for everybody that participated. Looking forward to all the data and the research that you will continue to bring and continue to stalk those relationships for us. Thank you.
I'm gonna have to get a button that says I'm the stalker. What it says though is persistence pays off. If you really want something, if the vice chair's coffee, we want it someday, you know, we just stay in touch with them and we make sure that we stay in touch with them. I don't want her getting on I-95 to have to buy coffee.
All right. Well, God bless and good night to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to do this.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Y'all did great. Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all. We had some good questions. They skipped past a lot of the things in their presentation, but I understand why. But let's just try and get them there.